When I started working for MakerPipe a few years ago, I couldn't tell one connector from the next. And when I was doing build videos early on, Dave had to pretty much plan and supervise every build for me. He figured out the connectors and all of that. And you can see that in some of the earlier videos. But now, fast forward a few years, and I've looked at probably thousands of builds that you guys have shared over the years. And now I've kind of, I can look at a build and I can imagine and figure out what connectors were used almost instantaneously. And I realized recently how that I do this, and so I decided to make this video to show you how to reverse engineer any maker pipe and conduit builds. And it's actually really simple. It's just a two-step process. You'll be able to look at a picture of a build and recreate it or customize it for your own needs. And I think this is a really great skill to have for not only recreating builds that you might see and want to make for yourself, but also for planning. You can learn the same process and apply it to planning projects as well. And we'll get into that later in the video, but let's just go ahead and start with this. And step one is to identify simple shapes, which sounds easy enough, right? And I've actually got a build example here. I like to learn by doing, so I thought we could just break down a build together. And this is an awesome greenhouse from Jeff from a while back. And if we look at this, you can see there's a lot of pipes, there's a lot of connections being made, and if you're not really familiar with the connectors, you can see all these and just have no clue how it's put together. But if we identify simple shapes, and I think at this point, there's really not any accessories in this photo. I mean, there are some like hinges and things here for the gate, but if at this point, I think it's good to just look past accessories and even look past bracing and just figure out some kind of main shapes that make up the frame. And in my mind, I immediately see a rectangle around the bottom here and then a triangle up top. And I think those two simple shapes, we start with that and we'll be able to figure out those connections. The rest of it will just come together and we'll figure out those last few things after that. But let's just start by breaking down these simple shapes, and we'll move on to step two. Step one's already over with. Step two is deductive reasoning. Now, it's kind of just a fancy way to say we're just going to make some assumptions based on those simple shapes and how to create them. Because if we go ahead and look at this rectangle, we can see here that in the vertical corner, in the corners here with the vertical, we got a pipe that goes up, and then there's two pipes that connect to that vertical at a 90-degree angle. So not only are we looking at the simple shape, but now we're going to kind of look at the number of pipes that are creating that shape. So in this instance, in the corner, it's three pipes being connected together in one connector for this corner connection here. And if we take that and we do some deductive reasoning, let's go over to the website and we can see all these different connectors, and it can be kind of overwhelming to see all the different options. But if we look, we can see that there is only a few connectors that allow us to join three pipes together. We've got the 180-degree connector here. You can see it's got one vertical and then two pipes that come into it. Very similar, sounds like what we need. There's also the 135-degree connector. It's got one pipe in the middle and then two pipes that come in from the side. Also sounds like an option. We've got the adjustable 180, which actually doesn't really do what we need it to. It does have the pipe in the middle, but you can see that the two pipes that come into it aren't in the same plane that we need. So that rules that one out. And then the last option that we've got is there's a pipe in the middle here of the 90-degree connector, and then two pipes that come in at a 90-degree angle. Sounds like it could be a good option. But if we go back and look at our picture here, and we can compare it to the possible options. So we got the 180, but you'll notice that creates just a flat connection between three pipes. It's 180 degrees. The other one is 135 degree, which is getting close to what we need, but we can tell that this is a harsh right angle, so the 135 is not going to work there. So that means the only possible option that we have for this corner connection is the 90-degree connector. And if we look at it and we see those three pipes at a 90-degree angle, then we know it's the 90-degree connector. And we've already figured out our first connection. And in fact, we just figured out four connections because this same technique was used in all four corners to create the rectangle shape. And just like that, we've already broken down that first simple shape and we've got the main rectangle of the frame put together. And it's a really great start. We've already figured out what connectors we need for that. And we can also see here that there is a brace in the middle that runs from the front to the back. I guess technically in the picture it's side to side. And then this long horizontal span of the rectangle is also being broken up. And this is a good technique for long structures. If you've got something that's, over 10 foot, you can break it up in the middle by doing this with, a 5 foot section before you have another vertical. But again, we're just going to count the number of pipes in this one connection. So we've got one pipe that goes in and connects at this side, one on the other side, the vertical again that runs through the connector, and then the side to side pipe. So that's four total pipes in one connector. And if we look at all the different options here, there's literally only one connector that would allow this to be possible, and it's the four-way connector here. And at this point, you don't even have to really know how the connector is assembled or anything like that. All you have to really pay attention is the number of pipes being connected, and it helps to kind of pay attention to how those pipes are connected. So, for example, here, this is a through pipe that's what we call a through pipe, where the pipe runs completely through the connector. And then any of these pipes that sit next to a bolt and kind of go into the connector, they terminate inside of it and they stop before it gets to the bolt. So we can take that knowledge and kind of see how this is put together. This is the vertical that goes up from the garden bed, and then you've got the pipe that comes out the front, and then the two pipes that come out of the side. So we now know that this could only be the four-way structural pipe connector there. And so we've already figured out the entire bottom section of this frame. And even though it looks like a few connectors, it's really just the 90s in the corners and then the four ways to reinforce and add some bracing. Now, before we go on to the roof, we might as well just finish off the bottom structure. And this is kind of an added thing here. This isn't, like a main part of the frame, but it is a gate because this is a greenhouse that you're meant to be able to get inside and or get inside of and back out. And so you have to have a gate there. And if we look closely, it kind of looks like an optical illusion if you look at this closely, because the way these pipes here that are side by side. But if you look really closely at the picture, you'll see it's another rectangle. But this time, it's different from the rectangle that we found earlier, because this one is kind of two-dimensional, and it's just like a door, like you can imagine in your house or something. And if we just, ask that same question, how many pipes are being connected? So it's a rectangle, but it's got two pipes being connected. So they're coming in and it makes an elbow or a 90-degree kind of elbow in the corner of the rectangle, but it's two-dimensional. It's only two pipes. And if we look at the possible options, there's really only three connectors. Well, I guess there's technically more if you consider the coupling, but to be able to connect in this way, it's really got to be the T connector, the 45-degree connector, or the adjustable angle connector. But we can look that this is a rectangle, just like you would imagine with a door, in your house or a cabinet or something. So this has got to be a straight connection, and it's an elbow. So it could technically be the adjustable angle, but in this case, that would not really make sense because it's a lot more expensive of a connector than the T connector. And the T connector is actually what was used here because it's two pipes being connected and it's a straight connection, just like that. And it's two pipes being connected together. So we can see that it has to be the T connector. There's no angles in it, so it kind of rules out these two. So we've got the bottom structure figured out. We've got the gate figured out. And then we can also see that next to the gate, there is a pipe going down to the garden bed. And this is kind of just, you would imagine like a door facing or something. So when the gate closes, it's right up against a pipe and the material in the frame. And if we look, again, we're just connecting two things because we've got this horizontal pipe and it's just being connected there. There's a pipe that's going straight down. So it's again two connections. And again, it's not angled or anything like that. It's just a straight connection. So again, we know that it's got to be the T connector. There's really no other option that would make sense here. And so, like I said, step one is just identify those shapes, look at the number of pipes that are creating those shapes, and then step two, just make some assumptions based on the possible connections and those number of pipes being connected. So that's kind of a lot, I know, all at once. But if you really break it down this way, it makes it really simple. And we can go on to the roof now, which is the triangle shape here. And if we look closely, we can see that going down, that all three parts of the roof are kind of the same, in this simple rectangle. There's also some bracing, but we'll come back to that. We're just going to focus on making the main rectangle shape first. And just like with the corners, once we figure this out once, we can see that it's repeated all the way down. So let's just count how many pipes are being connected here. We've got one that comes up from this side and connects. We've got one that comes up from this side and connects inside the connector. And then there's one long horizontal pipe that runs through the connector. So again, now we're connecting three pipes together. And if we go back, we know that the options for connecting three pipes together, it's got to be the 180, the 135, or the 90-degree connector. And we've already looked at the 90, and it's a really harsh right angle. And we've already used that here, but we can see that this isn't that harsh of an angle. Now, you could customize this if you wanted to recreate it, and you could use a 90-degree angle if you wanted a really steep pitched roof, and maybe you live in an area that gets a lot of snow, and you want to make that that pitch as aggressive as possible to allow snow to slide off. You could substitute a 90-degree connector, and that's why this skill is so great to have because you can recreate a build, but then also modify it for your own needs. But we can see that it's not that aggressive of an angle. It's not, a harsh right angle here. It's less than that. And so if we go back, the other option would be a 180-degree connector, but this isn't flat. It's not, just a flat roof, which would not be good, especially if you got a bunch of snow coming down and piling up on top. So it's not the 180. So again, we're left with one option here. It's got to be the 135-degree connector. And by just doing this deductive reasoning based on the number of pipes and then just kind of thinking about it logically, we can, identify the connectors pretty easily. And just like I said, that actually is repeated three times. So it looks like there's a ton going on in this roof here, but in reality, we just have 335-degree angle connections, and that makes up, looks like 7 pipes in the roof we just eliminated and already figured out just by identifying one connection here. And so then all that's left is are these braces here. And just like before, we'll just do the same thing we've been doing, and we'll just count the number of pipes being connected. So here we've got this long pipe that goes up to the roof. There's a connection being made here, and then there's a pipe that's connecting to it. So it's two pipes being connected together. So we know that, and again, we'll just go look at the connectors, and we can pay attention here that there's no angles or anything. So we go back to our three options, which is the T connector or the 45 or the adjustable angle, but it's just a straight connection. So we can do some deductive reasoning and make an assumption that this is going to be the T connector. It would have to be. So then that pipe goes down, and it looks like it could go all the way to the other side, but we can see that there's something going on here. Now we can't really make out what connector that is, but we can kind of, think about this logically based on what we just figured out from the previous, from the triangle. This pipe is continuous going all the way up to the roof. That would make the most sense here. And so that means this long pipe that's bracing this would have to be broken up into two halves, very similarly to what we saw down here. So if that's the case, that means there's a pipe here. We already figured out this connection, and it's basically the same type of connection here, except this time there are three pipes being connected together because we have to think about that half being broken up. Now, it's very similar to what we saw here with the four-way connector, except this time there's nothing coming out of the front of it. So it's just a flat connection between three pipes. And so we think about that logically, and we take that information that we just, discovered and found out, and we apply it to the possible connections that would allow us to make this connection with three pipes. And so again, we've got the 90-degree connector, or the 135-degree, or the 180. And it could technically be the adjustable 80 this time. But again, just like we saw with the adjustable angle, it doesn't really make sense because we just need that flat connection. There's no crazy angles being produced there. So with that, we can see that it's a flat connection between three pipes. It's got to be the 180 connection in the middle. It would have to be just based on the information that we found. And then we go down the rest of it, and down there, definitely can't see that connector this far away, but we can imagine that it's the same connection here because it's just two pipes being joined in the exact same way. And we figured out that brace just now. That was easy. And that same brace is being mirrored on this side. So now we've broken down this entire structure, including the gate. And there's really only one last thing we have to figure out, which is kind of a preference based on how you build this. So we can see that there's a really nice bend up here in the roof. It looks really cool. And you could potentially, use like an angled connector here to just go up from this, but they incorporated a bend, and this bend here, they could have done the vertical all the way up and then bent it and went up to the peak of the roof, depending on what, the dimensions and everything like that. But if you look closely, you can see that the roof and all 6 points of the verticals or the roof is attached in 6 places to the verticals of the cube down here. And if you look closely, you'll see that it's basically a pipe that comes down from the roof and then connects to the vertical in the rectangle. So it's two pipes being connected together, and it looks like they're being joined together, so coupled together. Now we at MakerPipe have a coupling here that would do this same kind of connection, but if you look close, you can see some set screws or kind of some bumps sticking out. So it would have to be something else. And in this case, it would be the electrical couplings that you can get off the shelf at Lowe's or Home Depot or Ace Hardware. But they just use those to join the roof to the rectangle cube shape on the bottom. But just like that, in just a matter of a few minutes, by just breaking down this into simple shapes first, and then counting the number of pipes being connected together in a certain part of those shapes, and then looking at the connectors and making some assumptions based on what we can see with those connectors and the the shapes and the number of pipes, we can then break down a build and figure out how to recreate it. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I think this is an awesome skill to have, like I said, for recreating projects, but also planning your own. Because you can imagine now, if you have a build idea, you can sketch it out on paper and then just break it down into a simple shape. So you have your build idea sketched on a piece of paper or whatever. You identify a rectangle in there, and maybe it's a rectangle with three pipes being connected in the corners. Well, they would have to be the 90. But if it's just two being connected in the corners, then it could be the T connector. So you could use this same process and skill for planning your projects as well. So I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, leave a like and comment. Definitely let me know. I'd love to know if you find this useful and if you're able to recreate builds and break down projects that you see. That would be really awesome. So definitely let me know in the comments. But thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next video.